Hey, what's up guys, it's Jay. So you guys been requesting a video for a long time. I know, it's been a while. I've been trying to get to it. Been working on it here on and off, but just been busy with other reviews and stuff. I have my website ready to go. It has the guide to set up your Android device, particularly the Retroid devices or AYN devices, but any Android phone will work really. And so I have a guide online, but I'm gonna walk you through in this video what to do, how to do it, all of that stuff. We're gonna set it up. We're gonna go step by step as much as we can, and then we'll go from there. But before we get started, if you guys found this guide helpful, please sure you guys are subscribed, like this video. It really does help me continue making stuff like this. It's helping to grow the community, all that stuff. So ultimately, I think you guys should use the online guide I have posted in a link down below the like button. And so use that because I'm going to be updating that over the course of time, over the course of the year, and in the future basically. And so that's going to supersede this video. But if you're watching this video, say later on, 6 months later, the online guide is going to have the most up-to-date information. The video here that you're watching may or may not. It just depends on how things change throughout the course of time and in the future. So what I'm trying to do here is give you guys the most essential information just to get the basics up. And then if you want more advanced stuff, you can go to the respective sites that you want to set up in particular. So for example, you want to set up more ESDE specific stuff, you can go to their site and use their guides. It's a little bit more detailed, and what I try to do is, try to extrapolate the basics and then give you guys kind of tips and tricks in my guide here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, guys, so before we get started with actual tinkering device, I wanted to just give you guys kind of the perspective, right? So before you get your handheld, you kind of want to use this time. Say you ordered the device and it's going to take a couple weeks. This is the time to kind of get prepped, get ready, do your shopping. And I'll give you that information now in terms of what you need to get. And so have that ready so that you're prepared when the device comes in. You're able to just set it up right away. You don't have to do any kind of searching. So do all that research beforehand. And so let's talk about that here. So first things first is you'll want to get an SD card, or a micro SD card, I should say. Most of these devices here you'll see, they all have a micro SD card slot to basically put your games and other things on there. And so that's the biggest advantage of having these kind of devices, right? You're able to expand your storage. You can get the lowest storage available internally and then just put everything on the SD card there. So I have in the guide I linked below, in the primer guide, it's basically a couple of suggestions of SD cards I recommend that I actually use myself. These are the ones that are really good. I think higher endurance, a little bit higher quality, so they're a little bit more expensive. They're like $40 to $50 usually, depending on where you get them. But I have it linked on Amazon if you'd like to get them. They are affiliate links, so if you guys would be able to purchase through that, that would be awesome. It helps me a lot. So those I had spec'd out to use the V30 spec. It is UHS 2.2, I think, and so high speed. It's very fast, and it's higher endurance than other lower quality micro SD cards, which I recommend for these kind of devices. Again, for putting so many games on your device, you kind of want the card to last long, especially if you're not planning to have any backups of any sort. So if you do that, I think this is a really good investment. Just buy once, cry once type of thing. So I have two of them. I have a Samsung and a SanDisk. They're both 512 gigs. So I think it's plenty of space for most games. I think if you're going to more of the Switch territory, you're gonna have to probably get a terabyte. So that's really the only difference there. And I have 512s on most of these devices here, except for the Odin 2 Pro, because I have a lot of Switch stuff. So that one I do have a 1 terabyte on there, but I usually don't recommend that just because the price is a little bit more expensive still. So the 512 is pretty good, kind of like middle ground for that. And Samsung has pretty good options. They have a Pro tier, and then they also have a select edition. Basically, it's a cheaper version. but it has like, it's a little bit cheaper. It's like $5-10 cheaper. SanDisk, they really only have like one option, and it's a little bit more expensive, like $5 to $10 more. So it just depends on what you want. But in terms of like the specs, they're about the same. So I linked those down below in the guide there. Also, you want to talk about this. So also we want to talk about the SD card reader. I use Anchor. I've been using Anchor for almost like 10 years at this point, I think. And so I think that's probably the way to go. Just buy Anchor. I think they're pretty reputable brand. They're pretty much everywhere. I have a few linked down below in the guide. And so, it depends on what your computer is and, what your connection is. But I would recommend getting USB-C just because it's like the more future-proof version. More and more devices are coming out with USB-C nowadays, especially for computers and such. USB-A, you can go with it. It's just there's less options these days, to be honest. But I do have them linked, again, at Amazon links there. So if you guys want to check those out, I think it's like from like $10 to like $20. So it's pretty cheap to get one. I'd highly recommend getting those because you'll get the higher reading speeds versus something that's like built in or like something that's older. You can only support USB 2 or something like that. But that's kind of the biggest point, that your device should have USB 3 so you can transfer all your ROMs and stuff like that really quickly. I highly recommend doing that. Okay, so once you get that kind of settled out, those are the main things you'll need for hardware, right? Just SD card and a reader, and obviously a laptop or a computer. I'm assuming you already have one. So the biggest thing now is just software, what to do, what to get, all that stuff. So the software you'll need to get, I have them linked down below, but I'll list them here. Basically, so the first app you'll want to get is called Obtainium. Basically, it allows you to keep track of apps that are not on Play Store and not on F-Droid or whatnot. So they're only on GitHub, for example. So this is a good way to kind of import those apps and track them. There's a lot of guides in terms of like how to import that stuff, and for this video, it's just going to be the basics of, hey, this is the app you need to get. The guide will actually give you more information on how to go about doing that, but I wanted to mention the name so you remember it, and then you can look through the guide to check that out. The next one is Odin tools. So that one is specifically originally made for the Odin, and then the Odin Pro and the Odin 2s. However, they work on all the Retroid devices that I show here, just because they're above all Android, and seems like the way that it's controlling the settings for the fan settings and the CPU settings are all kind of similar. So if you didn't already guess, that app actually controls your CPU mode, and then also controls the fan mode for that too. So, and then also the input. So it does all that, and that's really important for later because when you're launching different emulators, you'll want to control the performance and inputs depending on which one it is. So get that one, and then we'll talk about that later. The next one is more optional, but I highly recommend it. I use it for everything, just not for retro devices, but for pretty much syncing all my files on my server. It's called Sync Thing, and that allows you to basically kind of like Google Drive it, or like anything like that. It allows you to sync your files between your different devices, and it's a self-hosted method. So you kind of have to know a little bit about computers and how to set that up. But that one's more of an advanced topic. If you want to get into that, again, I'll have a guide down below in the link to kind of set that up a little bit. All right. So the next one is called Z-Archiver. So that one is a Google Store app. That one's easy to get. Basically, it's a file manager. It's a nicer file manager in terms of just like being able to do more things with it, and zip files and all that stuff, versus the regular Files app on the Google's Play Store. That's like the Google version of the file manager. But I think this is like a nicer version, especially if you want to mess around with putting files different places and all that stuff. That is a really good free app. No ads really, so that's why I choose this one. All right, so the next one is called Rufus, and Rufus is basically it's a tool that allows you. It's a Windows tool that allows you to flash your SD cards or micro SD cards or whichever they are, and it allows you to put ISO images on them, and also formats your cards as well. So it's a good way to format to ext4, which all these devices do use for formatting. That's the format that it uses. So that's what you'll want to have if you want to set it up beforehand. I personally never really did that, just because The exe format that Android uses is a little bit different from what I understand, so it may not work. I have not like extensively tried it, but it is available. And then the last app you'll want is called Unipatcher, and Unipatcher is an app that allows you to basically decompile an app and then add patches onto it and then recompile the app. That's essentially the gist. You'll need that later for a specific app called Aether SX2 or Nether SX2. That's the kind of continuation of that application, and that emulators for PS2 related stuff. So, and then last but not least is a Google account. Android devices generally do require a Google account, especially if you want to download apps from the Play Store. But if you don't want to download apps from the Play Store, you can obviously get them through F-Droid or Aurora Store. If you're more advanced, you want to go do it that way. But I think the Google account's like the most straightforward way. You just, most people have a Gmail account already, so you can just sign up, sign in, you're good to go. But if you don't want to or whatever, you can always use F-Droid and do it that way. And I'm assuming if you know about F-Droid, you can, figure that out on your own there. All right, so those are all the free apps and utilities that you'll want to have ready and just available or know about them, all that stuff. Now we're going to the paid app. So right now you'll see on the screen here, it's like a launcher screen, and this is from an app called Emulation Station. So you see it's called ESDE right there. And yeah, so it's a front end for launching your different games and emulators. And so it does cost money. I think it's like $5 one-time purchase. However, it's not on the Play Store anymore. It used to be, but there's some issues with the Google Play Store and stuff, so they decided to just go with Patreon. So what you'll have to do is you'll pay once on Patreon, and then you cancel your subscription, and then you'll still be on the email list to get updates directly from them. So just have an email that you usually use so that you'll get the updates and stuff like that, because you won't be able to update through the application itself. Unfortunately, you have to manually download it, and you can't use Obtainium to do it because there really isn't a way to check through Obtainium, because the way that they release their apps is non-standard essentially. But I highly recommend ESDE. It's one of my favorite launchers, by far my favorite really. It has, a bunch of themes and just looks nice. Yeah, it works really well, so that's why I use it. And also, when you switch to like Linux-based OSs for retro gaming, like the Trim UI rig I just did recently, all the folders and stuff, they're all pretty much the same. So I don't have to like think about like, well, do I need to switch the file structure or anything like that? So it makes it a lot easier to kind of switch between different devices. The next one you'll want is part of Emulation Station. So for scraping your artwork, so all these like images that you see right here, they're actually not like part of default, right? Like you add the ROMs, but they don't have these images that you see here. You actually have to scrape them. So you go to Scraper, you can scrape from Screen Scraper. I'll say that like 3 times, but yeah, you can scrape from 2 different sites right now. So I used the first one. You do need an account for it, and I'll link it down. Again, it's in the guide on how to set that up. You just need to create an account, and that's about it. And you log in through this menu here, and then you're good to go under account settings there. So all right. So let's talk about the different cores that you'll want to have, or let's talk about the different cores that I use generally. There's some cores that I don't basically use, or don't really play those games at all. It's basically all the Sega games and older SNES, but let's go through each one. So the first one is 3DS. You're gonna use Citra. So I have Citra and Citron. Citron's like a newer version, but Citron you can use as well, but I use Citra for the most part. And you see here, it's already set up and everything, but this is one of the apps that, for 3DS. And then DS, Drastic. This is an app you can get through the Play Store, or you can get it through other means as well, but either way, you can do that. And then GameCube, you have Dolphin emulator. This is for GameCube and Wii. So, yeah. And then let's talk about Retroarch. Retroarch basically has pretty much most of the other like older system, 8-bit and 60-bit systems. So the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, PS1. So it covers a lot of those. Some of the Sega stuff too as well. So yeah. And then we have Yuzu. This is for Switch. All right, so, Switch emulation, all that stuff. Great. And then you also have Neither SX2. This is for PS2. Showed you guys earlier there. So it launched a game. Exit game. But yeah, it launched a game there. But yeah, Neither SX2 for Switch. And then those are all the systems that we're going to go through and set up today. And so, all right, so the next thing is once you get your SD card in the mail, wherever you bought in store or whatever. So once you get your card, make sure it's formatted correctly, or you can wait for the device to come in and then insert it in. And then if it's new, Android will format it for you. So you don't have to think about that. That's my recommended way, so you don't have to mess with it. But if you want to do it, you can, format that and set it up. But assuming you already have it formatted, let's go and get the structure going. So you'll want, ideally, the best way to do this is to have ESDE already installed. And because if you already have it installed on the device, when you have your card inserted and formatted, and when you set up ESDE, it's going to create all the folders for you in that ROMs folder. So you don't have to touch it at all. You can just let it create it for you, and then you'll be fine. You don't have to touch it or anything like that. So that's probably the best way to go about it. Otherwise, you'll have to manually create the folders, which I don't know. It's up to you if you want to do that yourself. But I did give the folder structure in the guide below, and then also ESD does have their folder structure provided online as well. So it depends on you, but I think the most convenient way is just to get the device, put the SD card in, and then let the app set it up for you. And then it'll create all the system folder names and stuff like that. So that's that. That's for the ROM section. So I also have a folder called device setup. That's gonna set up the device as the folder describes. So things like the APKs, all the apps that you'll need to get, DLCs, files, BIOS files. I also have a folder called Drastic, Retroarch, and Neither SX2. So those will also be really important to folder here. You see that under ROMs, you'll see it has all the different folders. This is set up actually through ESDE originally, and I don't even have to touch it, but I have all my BIOS files. All of these file folders have different things, right? Drastic, all my Drastic configurations and whatnot. So I think having all that folder set up is probably the best way. So I just, again, created a device setup folder. So I just created a device setup folder, and within that folder, I just created, different folders, subfolders called APKs, DLCs, BIOS, Drastic, Retroarch, Neither SX2, and all of those are just basically to configure the respective app. DLC is usually reserved for Switch related stuff because Switch has their separate files for DLCs and patches. So I just put those all in there. So yeah. Okay, so you got your device, you have all the apps installed. Let's go ahead and set up each one, right? Let's do the tools first. I think the tools are probably the most important thing to kind of help you get going. So you see you have a bunch of apps already installed. So let's go with Obtainium first. The first app I talked about, this is basically the app to kind of keep track of all the different apps that are not on Play Store. For example, Dolphin and Retroarch, they're not on Play Store. I also have Neither SX2 patches covered as well. I'll provide the input file because you'll need to import these different links and set up this normally, because when you install the app, it doesn't come with all this stuff here. So I'm gonna set this up for you. You can just import the file, just download the file on the guide, and then just import it through here, right? And then you'll be good to go. And then you don't have to worry about it. So once you do that, it's gonna say, hey, you have new apps. It's gonna give you notifications. So you see it has a new update. So I'm gonna, do the download here, and then it's gonna progress and then install the app. So it's cool, it's installed. Same here, do the same thing here. So it's already updated, we're good to go. Boom, update, sweet. And that's pretty much it. So the app's very simple, but it's very useful. You don't have to check for updates and stuff manually. You can just, have the app do that for you. All right, so the next thing is Odin tools. So this one's a really cool app. This says, it's made for AY102. It's fine. You can hit accept. When you launch app, so first thing you want to do is app overrides, turn that on. Definitely want to turn that on. And then override delay, you can just leave that as default. You hit app overrides. You can see I have different apps configured. And so when you open this up for the first time, it's going to be blank, but you just add. So when you first open this section here, it's going to be empty. All you have to do is hit the plus button right there and select the app that you want to add. And then when you do that, right, you're going to be able to select. It's going to bring you to this menu, and then you can select, hey, what style do you want? L2, R2 mode, performance mode, fan mode. So you can set all this up however you like. So for example, 3DS, I don't have it. I just have it using the Odin style, which is basically the Switch style. It's this layout right here. You have no changes. And I'm going to switch to high performance. 3DS does require a little bit more performance, and I have the fan mode at smarts. So similarly, Yuzu, Neither, kind of similar things. Retroarch, not much performance changes there, so I'm going to have that at none. I'm going to leave the layout the same. And then Drastic is a little bit different. This is the one you want to switch to using Xbox layout. And then L2, R2 don't change. Use standard performance. You can turn off the fan. This one is actually performs really well on the Retroid Pocket 5. And then ESDE, this is really important. You want to make sure this isn't set for sure, because you want to make sure it's set to Odin, put standard, and then you turn the fan mode off if you want. This is optional, but you do want to make sure that the controller style is set, because since ESDE is going to be your main home launcher for Android, anytime that you're running Drastic, for example, or any other app that changes the layout, you want to make sure that when you're done playing the game, when you go back home, it switches back to Odin, so that you're kind of using that as the default layout, because it matches this button layout here. So once you set that up, Odin tools, you're pretty much done with that. And so next thing you want to do is, we'll skip over the sync thing. We're not going to cover that here. Z Archiver, we're really not going to cover that here, but I'll show you guys the app itself. It's really nice to use, really intuitive. Unipatcher. Don't think I have Unipatcher installed on here. Yeah, so I don't have it installed on here, but it's pretty straightforward. You open an app, and then you select the APK that you want to patch, and then put in the patch files. So all that will be covered in the guide. So first things first, you're going to go to settings here, and then you're going to go to display. I put this at 30 minutes. To me, it doesn't really matter, which is why I want it on all the time, basically. And then you can go to lock screen, or I think it's actually under security. Security, lock screen. Choose a screen lock, and I select none, right? So you can select different ones, but I select none. Kind of gives you that nice entry into the device like that. You don't have to put it on the lock screen. It doesn't feel like a phone anymore in that sense. So you just select none, and then you're good to go. And that's the main thing I do change, because once you use ESDE as your default thing, you can't really get to the app drawer menu easily. You kind of have to without this setup, you have to go here. You have to go to apps, go to all apps, and then find an app and open it. It's kind of not the most convenient. So if you guys want that set up to have access to all your apps and stuff, do it that way. But it's up to you. I think doing it this way is a little bit. It adds a little bit more time for sure, but it's I think it's worth it. So, all right. So here we go to Retroarch. So it's already set up to how I want it. So Retroarch is probably my least favorite app to set up. To be honest, but it contains a lot of older systems, and I know a lot of people play older games, so it's worth setting up for the first time. But when you first get it, it's not going to look like this. You're going to want to go to user interface. You're going to want to go to interface. So you go here, you basically scroll down, or just hit the up button, and then you go to menu. Right now it's set to X and B, which is the PlayStation style, but I think default, I think it's GUI or RGUI. One of those, I forget which one it was on, but just select X and B. And when you do that, go back here. You're going to quit, because it's going to ask you to restart. So we're going to quit. Right? When we restart it, it's going to come up like this now. So that's pretty much that. That's pretty simple. So next thing you want to do is set your configuration directory. So this is pretty much easy. You just have to go to the cog icon, which is this, right? And then go to directory. Here you can select the different folders for all your different items here. So I mentioned earlier, right, you want to have our Retroarch, all your configurations files in your SD card. So that way you can take it with you wherever you want to go or whichever device you want to go with. So that's the reason why I had those folders set up for you to do this, so that you can, hey, I want to put all my files and system files elsewhere or whatever. But for the most part, right, I mainly save, I pick the save files. That's the most important thing for me. Save states, I wouldn't recommend taking those, but you can if you want. I do have those, I think, saved, point to a location, but I don't rely on them, basically. I rely on the actual files. You can see here that I do have it selected already, but if you click A, it's going to be in this section already, and then you're going to be good to go, right? So this section's actually, it doesn't actually tell you the directory, which is kind of annoying, but it tells you up here. It's just like not really like the most intuitive because there's no like / or anything, but it does say up here, it says storage emulated 0 Retroarch sync save file. So that's my location that I picked for that. And so you can just pick the, some folder that you want to have configured pointed to this location here, and then you'll be set. That's the main thing that I want to set up first. You also want to do after this is enable the save configuration on quit. That's a really important thing because by default, Retroarch does not do that for you. So you go back here to the main section here, you go to configuration file. Make sure you save it first, so save current configuration. We're gonna just do that. So we're gonna go back to the cog session. You see the configuration. Make sure that this is enabled. This is turned off by default. I don't know why. I feel like this should be default by on, but save configuration on quit. Make sure that is enabled, because if you make all these changes and you forget to save and you quit, you're gonna lose all your changes. So really annoying. So just do that, or just remember to save every single time. But I tend to not do that. I just tend to rely on autosave, which is, all right, so next thing you wanna do is go to the online updater. So online updater, right? You have these different options here. There's assets, cheats, database, overlays, slang, shaders down here. So you quickly just, hit the A button, right? You're gonna update assets, control profiles, you can do that, cheats, database, overlays, shaders. So go ahead and just update those, just to make sure everything's updated. You can also mess around with the settings, point to different directories, the URLs for the core databases. But I think next thing we're gonna want to do is go to the core downloader. So you're gonna grab the different cores that you wanna play on. So Atari, you got a bunch of different cores. For me, for the most part, I just play Nintendo stuff. So you can see I already grabbed a few already. So once you grab all the cores that you want, you can just update them as you need to, but I don't really update them. They don't really need to be updated that often. You just go to online updater, right? Core downloader. You just download whichever ones you want. And then once you do that, you'll have a little pound sign right there on the right hand side. That means that it did grab it, and then later on you just hit update install cores, and then you'll be set. So that's pretty much it for the cores. It's actually pretty straightforward there. You just have to grab the ones that you want. Next thing we're gonna do is go to the input settings. We're gonna have to set up all the actual buttons for your different games. So we're gonna go here, retro binds, port 1 controls. That's usually the one that's mapped to the external controller here from its perspective. So the main thing we're going to change is actually the settings here. You see, by default, it actually doesn't have all this stuff set up. It could. It just depends on if it actually can auto-detect it correctly or not. But basically, you're going to just want to do that. Go through each one, right? For example, go through one here. So it's going to give you a little timeout section. Hey, if you don't press this, it's going to exit, which is good. So, but if you mess up, you can always go back. But I recommend just doing that. Click D-pad up, cool. D-pad down, cool. D-pad left, etc., etc. So just set up as it is, how you see it here. Don't worry about You see that key Z and key X, that's for the keyboard, if you actually connect the keyboard, but we're really just worrying about the actual buttons. And they may differ depending on how the manufacturer set up the button numbers and stuff like that. So it just depends on them, but you can set all this up, right? Go all the way down. Just to analog, you don't have to do anything else. The rest of this stuff is basically not used. Just for like older systems for a gun and stuff like that, but we're gonna go back. The other thing you want to set up is the hotkeys. Hotkey enable. I actually just use the L3 button to set up hotkeys, so you can use that. I actually had it at 109, which is this one. So that's fine. So this is at select. You can use select, you can use L3. It's up to you. I kind of switch between the two just depending on how I feel, but it's ultimately a preference thing. So up to you there. That's pretty much it for Retroarch. That's all you really need to set up in terms of just the basics to get things working. I did want to bring up one more thing, is the menu controls. If you want to set up these different things, you can use unified menu controls. If you want to do that, you can swap the OK and cancel buttons. Because right now it's basically B is for cancel, A is for select. But say you're on an Xbox layout, maybe you want to switch it back to, the way this is. But just, yeah, it depends on what you want to do. But I found that very useful depending on how used to you are with different configurations. Again, hotkeys, real quick, just you can do fast forward and all this stuff. I don't really have it enabled for this because I don't really use fast forward that often, but you can use that. I usually use it for like smaller devices like this. But yeah, once you set that up, make sure again, save the configuration file if you didn't have that autosave on, and then quit the app, and then you'll be good to go setting up that. So next one is Drastic. Drastic is a little bit easier to set up. When you first get in, it's actually gonna give you a little setup menu. You can select the folders and stuff. So, but if you didn't know how to do that, or you want to go through the menu, you can do that here. So right here at the last section here, you'll see it says system directory, and you see it says Drastic, right? That's the folder I have it as. And then I showed you guys earlier the folder that I created for that. So you can actually hit it. Now when you select this, it's gonna give you two options. It's either default internal folder or scoped storage folder. So what you want to actually select is the scoped storage. What that means is actually, hey, I want to connect to a external storage location, which typically means your SD card. So we're gonna hit the scoped storage. So right now it creates its own folder within the internal storage, but we're actually going to go here. My SD card, I call it Retroid 512. We're going to select Drastic. It has the same folders. This is all my synced information. And then you just hit use this folder, and then you'll be good to go. I didn't hit it just because it's going to basically make me restart. So that's the first thing you want to set up. Just point to that location so that everything that you do from this point on will be saved. The other thing is you want to do is set up your layout. Right now I actually have it as landscape X by 1, which means that the main screen can be as large or small as you want, and then the other one's like a fixed display or more of a fixed sized. The other one you can do is landscape 1 by 1, which I don't know, I think it's okay. I kind of like the option where you can mess around with the sizing, and so do that. And then that's the main thing you'll want to change. So for here, you can do the inputs. And you show mapping. You see that it looks like there's nothing here, but for some reason on the Retroid Pocket 5, when I use the app, it actually is blank, but it's not blank. There actually is a button there, like a letter there, but it's white. It's like white on white. Hopefully you guys can see it there if I'm clicking on it. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But it's already preset, so there's no mapping, there's no things you have to map to for Drastic. It already pre-maps it, but you can just select here and then make sure it says generic gamepad. So there's nothing to map per se, and then make sure that this is enabled. So says buttons with a mapping key will not be active in a controller overlay. So what that means is basically if you have an external controller, the overlay is not going to be active. So for system settings, I don't really touch anything here, but I do use the system time for RTC or the real-time clock, that's what it means. That's really the only thing I changed. You can change your nickname and stuff for your birthday if you want. I just leave those alone usually. One other thing I do change is, it's up to you really, is you can use either Drastic's save format or use the raw save format, which has no footer, but I just use Drastic's. It's fine, it works for me. Pretty much everything else is stock. I don't really change anything here, so I left everything pretty much alone. I just wanted to point out that one setting if you wanted to use the raw format or Drastic's format. All right, so video settings, basically graphic settings. I have everything turned on, have high resolution 3D rendering, 60-bit rendering, disable edge marking as well, and I have multi-threaded 3D rendering as well on. So all those, make sure those are on, and then you'll be set. So you're wondering, okay, how I'm gonna load the games, right? This is where you do it. So you're gonna go here, you're gonna NDS. So I put NDS, you see where it does say ROM/NDS, and it has this like number here, that's referring to my SD card. So I have pointing to my SD card here. So for example, if I wanted to add it again, I hit the plus button. So if I wanted to add a game or all of my games here, I hit the plus button. You say add scope storage directory. So you want to put into all your games, not just one game. All right, so go here. It's going to use the file app for Google. You're going to go to Retro 512. That's where my SD card is. You're going to go to ROMs. And then you're going to select NDS. And then once you select NDS, you just hit use the folder. It'll add it here. And then Drastic will know, hey, these are the games. It's linked to that same folder. And then from there, you can just exit Drastic. You don't have to do any autosave enabling or anything. It's already auto-enabled. And that's pretty much for Drastic. There are hotkeys you can set up, but I find that it's, you don't really need it. And I'll show you the reason why in a second. I'm gonna launch up a game real quick here, just to show you guys. So you can see it's launching, loading. The reason why you don't need hotkeys is because you hit the back button and it has all the settings for you. You don't have to do anything, and then that's pretty much it. It's pretty set up. So I wanted to show you guys real quick just I do have some settings. You have this switching here. You can switch between the two modes or view modes, I guess, if you will. So this switches between the main and the secondary screen. You can do that if you want. You kind of just leave it alone, to be honest, or you can set it up. It's really easy to actually set up. So you go to menu, right? You go to edit, select screen layout. Make sure that one's already set to the X by 1. You do editing, whatever. So this actually I wanted to show you guys real quick. All right, so this is like my custom setup. I just set it to the specific size and stuff like that. You see it does say game specific layout. So if you hit menu, you can actually save for different configurations. Global layout, current game, which is game specific. Do different things. Yeah, so I just set it for this particular game. Hey, I want to do it for this. And then what I mentioned earlier about setting the different hotkeys, you go to here, you go to show mapping. See that it's pre-mapped, right? You see it's L3 to slot screens, R3 to swap between 1 and 2 screen layouts. Again, it's kind of annoying because it's white on white, but yeah, you'll be able to see it once you install the app. So once you're done with that, Drastic's pretty much done, set up, it's good to go. So Nether SX2 is a little bit more involved because you actually have to produce the app yourself before you can actually use it. You can use 830XS2, but that one is a little bit older, and the developer basically stopped developing and didn't provide source code and all this stuff. So that's why it's a little bit more complicated to set up initially to produce the app, I guess you should say. So the version that you'll want to get online is the 3668 version. That's the one most people use. So go ahead and grab that version. Use UniPatcher to decompile and add in the patches for the APK. That converts it to NeatHereSX2. Once you launch it, it's going to start up. It's going to ask for you to add your BIOS files. So what you'll want to do is go to App Settings. You go to BIOS files. You see how I've added already. You can import a BIOS file. So I go to Retroid 512. I go to BIOS, and I have all my BIOS files here. So you can just select the one you want to add in, and then add it in. It'll show up here. So I already have one added here, and then that's pretty much it for BIOS settings. It's pretty straightforward. But the other settings you'll want to go through is the general one. You can leave fast boot on. Enable patch codes. You can leave most of this stuff off, to be honest. Show frame, show speed, all this stuff. You can leave all that on or off. It just depends on you. It's just preferences for these generic settings. System is pretty much I leave it all default. I don't really touch any of this stuff here. The graphics I do touch. So I do select Vulkan. I use 3x native, and then I have enable patch screen patches on. So what that does is it allows you to convert 4x3 to 16:9 for most games. It actually does a pretty good job. And so that's pretty much it for like changing graphic settings. And I have those in the guide down below, and I'll update them, as time goes on, whatever the most accurate information is. So that's pretty much it. You can also set up retro achievements if you want, but I don't really care about achievements and stuff like that. So you can just, once you set that up, you're gonna have to add your games, of course. Now, how do you add your games? Well, games, you're gonna go here. It's like ROMs, PS2, and then you can add them in. Or the other way is you go to, so to add your games, you wanna go to the settings, app settings, and then go to the game list. You see I've added in both here. I don't know why it actually does this, but I think it's because I have my Neather settings, and it loaded it in, and so it picked like 2 different SD cards. So you'll just want to hit the plus button, select your PS2 ROM section, and then you'll add that in, and you'll be set there. So that's pretty much it. So you go to, so the next thing you want to do is go to controller settings. I was about to reset my settings, which would have been bad. Touchscreen, you can hit none. You actually don't need this. Just turn that off. And then touchscreen port, make sure it's port 1. For the most part, it should be port 1. You shouldn't have to actually change that setting. Next, down below, you want to hide with external controller. Make sure that's selected. That's going to allow you to hide the actual overlay that's going to show up normally, but because it detects a external controller connected, it's going to hide that screen overlay there. We said we're going to set up port 1. So pretty much everything is going to be default settings. You can try the automatic mapping. You can just hit Retroid Pocket controller. I'm not going to hit that because it could mess up my bindings. But if you want to bind it manually, you can just go through like we did with Retroarch and just select each one up, right, down. And this is really straightforward. I mean, you could just map it to however you want in this case. But pretty much all the buttons, layouts, stick up, you can just do that. What I recommend probably just doing is just hit automatic mapping, and then just go through and check which ones are not correct, I guess. After a while, you'll kind of know which axis and which button it's referring to after a little bit, because all the button numbers are all the same throughout the different apps you're using to set up the input there. So once you do that, you'll pretty much be set, and then you can play your games on Neather. So real quick though, I just want to bring up an app real quick just to show you guys what would happen. So it's loading up, it's cool. You hit the back button again if you want to bring up a hotkey menu basically, and you can just go to settings, you can change all different things and whatnot and all that stuff. So it's all available to you. So that's neither SX2. Dolphin emulator is a little bit hard to set up, to be honest, and I highly recommend you guys going through my guide for this one, just because it's a little bit weird. And yeah, but showing a video, it's fine. It's just more like, it's just easier to kind of look at what you need to change, rather than like pause, go back on the video and all that stuff. So when you set it up, obviously it's not going to look like this. So go to cog, we're going to go to config, go to general first. We're going to go through each like section. Pretty much everything else, everything is, you don't have to enable anything there. Interface, landscape, leave everything else pretty much the same, default. I just turned this on, use black backgrounds because Retroid Pocket 5 is using OLED display. Might as well take advantage. Audio, nothing. Paths, nothing. You can just leave this all default. You can change these actually if you want to point to your SD card as well. I just leave those default because those are not really a huge deal in my opinion. I just really need the save files, to be honest. GameCube, nothing. Wii and GameCube, pretty much nothing. You can change these again if you want, but it's more for like advanced stuff, and I'm just really gonna show you guys just the basic stuff. And that's pretty much for the basics. You don't have to touch the rest, but the big thing here for playing the games is graphic settings is make sure you guys use the Vulkan backend. Sorry, make sure so you can use either Vulkan or OpenGL for your backend. Vulkan seems to work okay. It just depends on the game, but I do use hybrid Uber shaders. That's definitely use that, and then for 16:9 since this is a 16:9 system. And pretty much everything else I leave the same. I do use internal resolution at 3x there, so make sure you go there, set that up. This device can support up to 3x usually. You can change the driver because it is on a Qualcomm chip, but I just use the default. This is an older Qualcomm chip, so it's going to be a little bit hard to use, like for like compatibility for different drivers. And if you're not really familiar with all that, just ignore what I said and just keep going. So we're gonna set up the GameCube controller. It's gonna say standard controller. Just select that, make sure that's selected, hit the cog button there. What we're gonna do here is gonna go down to, again, kind of like what we did earlier, right? We're gonna select a button and then you're gonna bind it to A. In this case, I'm gonna bind it to B because that's how the GameCube was set up. And then bind B button, I'm gonna bind it to Y, even though it messed up there. Oh, there we go. I don't know why it reset itself there, but go through all that. Again, guide will have all that stuff here. Control stick is basically your left stick. Leave all this stuff all the same, like modifier, dead zones. You can mess with that if you want, if there's something weird, but the C stick is gonna be your right stick, right analog stick there. And then your triggers are gonna be your L2 and R2. All right, so for Wii stuff, I actually haven't been playing on my Retroid Pocket 5. I've been playing on the Mini actually, just because it's like 4x3 and stuff like that. But when you go to here, so Wii Remote 1, right, you hit the cog button. You can go to nunchuck, select the nunchuck as your extension, hit the cog button. And this is how it's going to be set up. Again, in my guide, I'm going to have this already described. So you guys can just set it up as you see fit here. But you see in Z, I have it as L1, and then Z is, I think it's this one here to trigger. But just go through, set that up. And then for the shake, because it's like a nunchuck, right? I just have that all set up to R1. And then the rest is pretty much empty. We're gonna go to Wii Remote now. And then this is pretty straightforward, a little bit easier to deal with. The Wii Remote has like A, B, and the 1, 2 buttons. So you're gonna set that up like so here. I got this, again, have it in the guide. Start and select this plus and minus, like this pretty simple. D-pad straight up and down. This one, the hotkey, basically that allows you to kind of emulate the nunchuck section, like to kind of create and turn on so the hotkey section, that allows you to kind of like control the motion sensing part of it. So I'm going to use the L3 and R3 buttons to turn that on for sideways toggle and upright toggle. That kind of allows you to create that motion sensing feeling. So that's pretty much it for setting up Wii. It's a little bit, again, has extra like settings you have to set up. And then in practice, it does work okay, but it's one of those systems where you kind of have to get used to playing with an emulated setup because, well, it's not really using real nunchucks. So, all right, so for Citra, I do use Lime 3DS, but it's pretty much the same app. Bring up Lime 3DS real quick just to show you guys. When you set it up, it's gonna go to ask for permissions, give it permissions, and then when you go to here, you're gonna go to gamepad, set up the controllers first, all the inputs. Make sure you set that up. It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing like weird or confusing about these ones. L is for your bumpers, and then ZL is for your triggers, for example. For graphics, I use OpenGLS. It's a little bit more stable. You can try to use Vulkan, but sometimes I find it a little bit unstable there. I do use 4x resolution as well. And that's pretty much it for the graphics settings. But actually, I haven't been using Citra. I've actually been using Lime 3DS. It's still in active development, unlike Citra there. So again, OpenGLS, GLES there. I do enable the Spear V shader generation and enable synchronous shader compilation there. It's a little bit more detailed here, so I use 4x native, which is 960. 5x is a little bit too much for this chip to handle, and also, 960p is close enough to 1080p, so I'm not really like, crying that I'm missing a few resolution pixels there. So that's pretty much for graphics and settings. And obviously, when you set up the device first, you're not going to see any of your games here, right? So similarly, you're going to have to add the games on here. So you see where it says here, select game folder, and we'll select the games folder, and then select N3DS, which stands for 3DS games. Set that up, and then that's pretty much it for 3DS related systems. All right, so lastly, Yuzu. Yuzu, also similar to Citra, same development team for the most part. So when you set that up, give it permissions, you're going to be similarly, right? You're going to have no games. You're going to add, manage game folders, hit the little plus button, pick the folder you want, and it's going to add it, and then you're set for games. So that's pretty straightforward there. This one's a little bit more interesting, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but just the basic stuff, pretty much everything's default here. You can use dock mode, which basically tells the Switch emulator, hey, I'm running in dock mode, running in 1080p, that sort of thing. For this device, you can do that because it is 1080p, so get the most out of it. But the chip performance, it's a little bit slower, a little bit older chip, so just your mileage may vary there. I do use 1x resolution here. I don't really go higher than that. Such emulation's quite demanding on chips, even like the new one, like Gen 2. I actually only use 1080p on that one as well because it's only 1080p screen as well. Force maximum clocks, make sure that's on. It should be on by default, but if it isn't, make sure it's on. Pretty much everything else you can leave the same. Not much changes there. Yeah. And then audio, I use auto for that setting, and I'll show you why in a little bit. One thing I did want to point out here is your controls. Hit player 1, use Pro Controller. You can auto map to to controller here, which tries to map to the controller here, the external controller that's connected here. Or you can just go through, press all the buttons, do all this, right? Right stick, triggers, vibration, make sure that that's on. I mean, these more modern systems, are pretty easy to kind of set up the inputs for. So we're gonna go to here, right? GPU driver manager. So right now I have a bunch of different driver versions because I use for testing, but normally it's gonna be blank. And for this Retroid Pocket 5, you can probably just use the system GPU driver, which is this guy here at the top left. But right now I do use version 9.2. And then again, I'll update in the future if this video is like older or something, like on that guide. Hey, this is the version I'm using now, that type of thing. So, but for now, this is the version I'm using. It works fine for the most part. There's some games where this driver is not compatible at all with the games I'm running. So I'll show you how to resolve that. So here, when we go, so for example, I want to play Sea of Stars, right? And I want to say it didn't work with the driver I was using. You see that I held the button, and it goes into this sub menu where you can, select whatever driver. Say if it wasn't like working, I would select the system GPU driver, and that's kind of how you would resolve that. Some games like Star Ocean, it doesn't work with the auto setting for the audio. So you can go to here, the submenu, go to audio, and then I pick QB. There's different options here, but QB is the one that works for some reason versus like auto. I don't know why I can't auto pick up that engine. You can also change the graphics. All the settings that you saw earlier with the graphics and stuff, you can do it here per game, I should say. Also, you can do add-ons as well. You'll see that I have all the DLCs and the updates as added on top. However, just note that doing it this way does install the files onto your internal storage. So if you want to make sure everything's all in your external storage, you'll have to combine the NSP files, and that's for a different topic for a different day. But I wanted to just show you guys just the basics of setting up the Yuzu there. So that's pretty much for all the systems that we're talking about today. All right, so once we have all those games set up, all the systems set up really, and you have ESD installed, and you have it set up as this is like your default launcher. And how to do that real quick is you got to go here. Sorry, you should probably go to here, cog settings, and go to, you can type search and type in home. This is probably the easiest way to do it, default home app. Right now, you guys can see I have it as ESDE selected. Quickstep and Retro Launcher is, Quickstep is the Google like default home launcher, and then Retro Launcher is their own launcher for the games. So you can use either or, but if you want to use ESDE, make sure ESDE is selected as your home app, because every time you press home, it's going to bring you to this menu. So first things first, when you get the app, have it installed, right, and all that, you make sure you want to go to UI settings. So first things first, what you want to do is go to input device settings. Go here, and then this is going to be turned on. So make sure that's turned off, because that will turn on the display, like the overlay, kind of like the virtual buttons and stuff, because it doesn't know that actually you have an external controller attached. So make sure that is turned off unless you want something to be overlaid. And then something else I wanted to point out, just for if you guys want to do more advanced stuff, you go to other settings, alternative emulators. You can see all the different systems here. So by default, ESDE does set up for most parts, like the older systems, they use Retroarch settings here, but you can use like different things. There's a bunch of options, right? But I just leave for the most part everything alone except for Dolphin. I use the standalone version because I don't want to use Retroarch, so I just do that. All right, same thing with the 3DS games. I use Lime 3DS, and then you can use default. If you're using Citra, which I do recommend generally Citra, just because it's a little bit more like standard, I guess. You just use default or standalone. That will work. Drastic, make sure you select Drastic. If you do like the default one, it's actually going to use the Retroarch version, but I recommend using Drastic. PSP, we didn't really talk about PSP, but you can set PSP. I use PSPP. DuckStation, I use the standalone version, but you can just use Swan Station as well. That'll bring up the Retroarch version. I just don't play PS1 games on this device, but I do have it configured because some of my other devices use ESDE as well. So Switch and Wii. So Switch, I do use Yuzu, and then Dolphin, use Dolphin. These are more for advanced topics. So if you want to set those up, I'm not going to cover it in this video, but it will be covered in the guide on how to configure this because it's a little bit more involved than this video is trying to be. I'm trying to keep this a little bit short as possible just to make it more digestible for you guys. So, all right, so artwork. Artwork's pretty simple. At the beginning, I talked about getting the scraper set up, your app count. So make sure you guys selected screen scraper or use the game's DB. There are rate limits, so make sure that you guys aren't scraping the site all the time. There's a limit. Here, what I would recommend doing, because you're starting new, you're not going to have any kind of artwork, so you're going to want to kind of pick and choose which systems you want to do. So for example, I want to do systems instead of games because hey, I want to do system at a time or maybe one system a day. So say I want to do I don't know, N64, I'm going to select that, hit back. You see now it says one selected, and that's N64. You go to account settings, make sure that your account username, password are set up, and then hit this button here to turn it on to use this account for screen scraper. Content settings, I just leave everything on here. Just downloads everything. So different themes for ESD use different content settings or different content media to show. So make sure that that's, you get everything. You can select what resolution and all the stuff here, but I use everything default for the most part. So I'm not really messing around with this too much, but you can mess around if you want. Other settings, I don't really mess with this either, but you can if you want. If you're having a hard time finding certain art box, you can actually try to change the temp timer and all this stuff. So once you're ready though, hit the start button and just sit back and let it do its thing. And I recommend just plug it into the charger and leave the screen on, or else you might not be able to actually download download the artwork there. So yeah, that's pretty much getting the art box work. So once you get that, you should see something like this. And you notice that even then, some of them, this one, doesn't have everything, doesn't have the art box on the right hand side, but the rest of them do because these are the most popular games on that system there. But wanted to talk about real quick just the themes. So you see here, there's a bunch of different themes that you can grab. There's a ton. You just go through it, have fun, just check it out. See, edit how you see fit. There's different themes I already had downloaded. For example, I'll just show you real quick. Just select that. I changed to this one here. You can check color scheme, font size, all that stuff. And hit back. It's going to apply the theme here. It's going to change it now. So you see, sometimes it takes a little bit to change, but yeah, there we go. Now it's this theme here. Kind of one of my favorite themes to go to too. It's a really modern looking themes, nice looking, and all that stuff. There's a more advanced stuff. You can actually use your own custom background images for each system and icons and stuff. But for now, we'll just leave it as is. So you're wondering how does this app know where to grab my games and stuff? Actually, when you first set up this device, when you run the application, it's actually going to prompt you and say, hey, select your ROM folder, and then when you do that, it's going to actually search that folder and check if there's anything in there. If there's stuff in there that detects, hey, there's already stuff in here you want to overwrite and whatnot, you can do that or you can not do that. For example, maybe I could show it here. So you see here, I don't have an SD card here at the moment, and so I wanted to show you guys here. You can see begin setup, grant permission, select directory. This is your application data directory. So earlier when I had you guys create that folder called ESDE, that's actually going to contain this application directory, right? So we're going to select that directory. I'm just going to select this one for now, but now it's going to say select games or ROMs directory. So it says select the directory. Just read the prompt, right? It's pretty straightforward. You can name it ROMs. Name it exactly that. Don't stray from that. Select the directory. Same thing, right? Select the ROM directory, and then that's it. Once you select the directory, we're just going to do this real quick. Now it says create system directories. So there's this thing called systeminfo.txt, which contains information for each system. So when you create those folders, or if you create it manually, Again, I highly recommend just using an ESD to create that for you, so you don't have to like worry about it. But just create the folder called ROMs with the S is the lowercase version. And once you do that, you'll be loaded, and you'll see again. So yeah, that's pretty much a basic setup of setting up an Android device like the Retroid Pocket 5 or the 4 Pro or the Odin 2 or the Mini. They all kind of have the same setup, especially since the layouts are more or less the same. There's really no buttons that are missing from any of these devices. So that's why I decided to make a dedicated video for like most Android devices that are on the market today. So this is just a basic setup. If you want more advanced stuff or more detailed stuff, check out the guide down below the link. Let me down in the comments below if there's anything missing, you guys want to see more or anything like that. I'll add to the guide or make another follow-up video. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and make sure you guys subscribe again. It helps me a lot. And with that, I will see you guys later. Peace.